The officers, two of them, played the song Baby Shark extremely loudly for up to 2 hours on a loop while they were in that room.
Kill me. Kill me.
There are some people listening now who are drowning out Baby Shark on their television. History is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
So here's the story. There is a man named John Basco. He was an inmate of the Oklahoma County Detention Center, and he passed away. He died at that jail on Sunday, September 11th. According to a media release that the jail officials put out, he was found unresponsive in his cell just a little bit before 4 a.m. in the morning, around 3:50 a.m., and officers there who found him attempted to resuscitate him, and then emergency responders arrived. They attempted to revive him as well. They were unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead at 4:06 a.m. Now, according to the release, there's no foul play suspected here. They are looking into whether or not it was a drug overdose of some kind. So the story isn't about someone getting killed in jail necessarily, at least on the surface. But it is, here's one of the wrinkles. He was booked into the jail on a drug trafficking complaint, let's call it, or a charge, on Thursday. So he only lasted from Thursday until Sunday at the jail. That is, usually not good, especially if foul play is involved, right? That means maybe somebody took him out. But in this case, maybe he got some kind of illicit substance while in the jail and passed away due to that, if it was in fact a drug overdose. There's a lot to look at there. Now, guys, that story is already like, it's a little sus, but not, there's nothing really to talk about here. A man died while in custody. But there's more. See, this wasn't the first time John had been in that specific detention center. Back in 2019, he was serving some time when he alleges he and several other inmates were subject to a type of torture that you were alluding to, Ben, a type of psychological torture, or at least harassment. I don't know. It's kind of weird how you classify it with language in English, right? It could be torture. It is torture, and this type of thing is torture in many contexts. I would argue that in this context it is torture, but I'm not a lawyer. He alleged, as well as other inmates, that several officers at that jail placed them in a room that is generally reserved for speaking with an attorney, right? You've seen those on television before. Maybe you've seen the inside of one, where an attorney and an inmate can meet in private. They said that once in there, they were handcuffed with their arms behind their backs, and they were made to stand up for hours at a time, up to 2 hours at a time while in these rooms, often with multiple inmates in there at a time. And then a song was played very, very loudly inside that room while they were in that, it could be considered a stress position, right? If you're made to stand up. Oh, they were handcuffed to the wall, by the way. So it was like hands tied and against the wall. The officers, two of them, played the song Baby Shark extremely loudly for up to 2 hours on a loop while they were in that room.
Kill me. Kill me.
There are some people listening now who are drowning out Baby Shark on their television or their smart home device. Also, don't have a smart home device.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably a tablet. All right, guys, well, let's talk about this. First of all, do you personally consider that torture?
Hearing one song for an extended amount of time.
At a very high volume.
At a very high volume it really depends on the time interval, doesn't it? What is an extended amount of time here? Not to answer a question with a question, but are we talking 1 hour? Are we talking 36 hours? when you get
we're talking 1 to 2 hours at a time.
1 to 2 hours at a time, and it's a relatively short song that is pretty repetitive. With that time interval, you could consider that psychological torture. It would not be to the same level as, say, earlier incidents involving the Barney theme song, right? For anybody not in the US, that's the big purple dinosaur. That's been used in the past. I think it's definitely a dick move, but it's, if it goes that far, I mean, such a short song for 2 hours will give you a non-consensual version of semantic satiation. So you could call it torture.
Yeah, and we've certainly heard of occasions where, you know, prisoners of war, I suppose, or, you know, detainees have been kept up for days on end with really heavy, loud, like metal music playing on a loop at incredibly high volumes. That's more like a sleep deprivation tool. This really is more along the lines of psychological warfare. And I would definitely still consider this a war crime.
Okay, so the officers in question, according to their own statements, the ones who were administering this, they called it discipline. They thought of it and used it as a disciplinary tactic. Seriously. They, according to their own statements...
Just don't believe them.
Yeah, right. According to their own statements, they said they didn't agree with the way discipline was handed out, what types and how it was handed out there at the facility. And, you know, they're basically employees saying, you know, they're not doing this right. We're going to show you the right way to do this and really show these inmates when they do something wrong. And also, guys, according to the district attorney there in Oklahoma, it wasn't torture, but it was, quote, inhumane discipline. Okay, so it was inhumane. And he charged both of these officers, as well as the lieutenant who was in charge of these officers, who apparently found out about it and didn't do anything about it. He charged them all with misdemeanors. They were misdemeanor counts of cruelty to a prisoner and conspiracy.
Copy. Quick question, Matt. So this is not... everybody on either side of this case is clear that this was not interrogative, right? This was not enhanced interrogation. They weren't trying to learn something from the people subjected to this. They were trying to punish them for a thing that they had done.
Correct.
Okay.
And this particular detention center has had a real problem with, I guess you could call it, discipline in the past. Because the man who died, John Basco, he was 48 when he died, by the way. He was the 14th person to die while at that detention center this year. Now, that 14 doesn't sound like that high of a number, but for that many inmates to die while at the facility, and it's not like they were an old, you know, someone who'd been in there for 25 plus years and they got their charges when they were in their 50s or 60s. We're talking relatively younger inmates who passed away. And the majority of them guys passed away, at least according to, you know, the information we're getting from the facility itself, they passed away from drug overdoses. So drugs are getting into this facility like crazy. There's an article from Channel 4 KFOR from Oklahoma. They've got an article titled 14 Oklahoma County Detention Center inmates have died this year. Toxicology report claims 1/4 of them are due to fentanyl overdoses. And it's not just fentanyl. It's also methamphetamine and several other drugs that are getting smuggled in at extremely high rates. So you can maybe imagine why those officers felt like there's something wrong, but then they took it into their own hands and did some horrible things. I don't know. I'm trying to just see all sides. Like, what is happening here at this facility? Because we can only see from the outside, right? The big question is, I think, in everybody's mind, did John's death, when we talked about at the very top, did it have anything to do with that 2019 instance of inhumane discipline? We don't know. At least nobody's saying. Perhaps one of the major contributing factors here in that would be if the officers who had administered that were then at the jail when John returned in 2022. And the answer is no. Both of those officers were fired.